Morning from London, and welcome to the first in the series of the Commonwealth Clean Oceans Catch-Up Series, where we aim to provide a bit of a spotlight to our amazing partners working on the Commonwealth Clean Oceans campaign across every country and territory of the King's Baton Relay on its journey to the Glasgow 2026 Commonwealth Games. Very pleased to be joined this evening in London, this morning in Australia, by our amazing Australian partners at Tangaroa Blue, and we're joined today by Heidi Tate, who is the CEO and co-founder of the organisation.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to have a chat today. Tangaroa Blue is celebrating our 22nd year this year, so we've been around for a while. In fact, we were looking at marine debris before really marine debris was a mainstream issue. People really thought I was talking about driftwood when I was talking about marine debris back in the early 2000s. So it's good to see internationally that the awareness on this issue has come a long way, although there is still far to go. But Tangaroa Blue was formed to create a network. We run a program called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. It's a national network of volunteers, partners, government agencies, industry and business, Indigenous rangers, schools. And our focus is obviously in the removal of plastics and other debris that's already out in the environment, but more importantly, to collect really good science data to try and track it back to the source and figure out what needs to change so that we can prevent the release of this stuff into the environment in the future. So maybe one day we don't need to do cleanups.
Yeah, it would be good to hit that point, right? And I know in our kind of experience of working with partners across the Commonwealth, it sort of demonstrated what a huge issue it is, and also quite how much progress there is to kind of make on the issue. Are you able to share a bit more around why awareness of the impact that plastic pollution has on our oceans is so critical at the moment?
I think if you take it right back to the basics, is that every piece of plastic in our environment has passed through somebody's hands. And what happened to it after it passed through their hands is why, we have this big issue. They were being disposed of, or it was being lost, or it wasn't the right product to start with. There was a design flaw. So we really have an amazing opportunity to address this issue. Out of all of the environmental issues that are on our planet, this one we should be able to fix because it is about our behaviour, what we use, how we dispose of things. And that's why I think there's so much hope around this issue. But it is also, one of the issues that is growing the most because our population keeps growing. So we keep producing and using more and more stuff.
Yeah, definitely highly kind of unsustainable in terms of its current trajectory. I guess, as I mentioned, we're working with partners across the Commonwealth, and it's been fascinating to see the variation from country to country and the impact that plastic pollution has. I guess would be interested to know a bit more around kind of how plastic pollution is kind of impacting Australia's ocean and marine landscapes, and sort of also the differences between kind of state to state and such a geographically diverse country. Interesting to know a bit more around kind of how plastic pollution is kind of impacting those environments.
I think when we look at plastic pollution and we look in the Australian context, we really need to look at it at a regional scale. So by analysing the data in the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database, and this database has been going since we started the organisation, and we've just kicked over 30 million items that have been recorded in the database. So we have a really good idea of what's happening in different parts of Australia. And the first thing that we can say is the closer we are to our populations and our cities, the more of the rubbish and the plastics that we're finding in our environment is our own rubbish. So it's things that we're using on a day-to-day basis. It's food packaging, it's cigarette butts, it's plastic drink bottles. It's those things that are used by the population that get discarded. They may not all have been, left on a beach, but they enter the stormwater systems through our cities, and they make their way through our rivers, our creeks, and then into the ocean. So that's the one thing. If we then go to our really remote areas, so if we look at Cape York, which is up in the very northern part of Australia, if we look out on the islands like the Indian Ocean territories, Christmas Island and Cocos Keeling Islands, 90% plus of the rubbish that we're finding there comes from overseas. So it's not domestic rubbish. It can be coming on ocean currents. It can be coming from cargo ships, from international fisheries. So even if we had a very good policy on marine debris and plastic pollution in Australia, which we currently don't, we would still have a problem in those areas because it's not our rubbish to start with. So it's very limited in what we can do. So I think that what's critical is that we have, the Global Plastics Treaty is critical to get on, to get everybody on board, because even if we are doing everything that we can in Australia, it still means that we have an international problem, and that's going to wash stuff up on our beaches anyway. So I think that's what's really critical. We need everybody connected. We need all countries doing the same thing. We need to be supporting those developing countries. But number one thing we need to be doing is reducing the production of plastics. That has to be the number one priority.
Yeah, I think it shows kind of how terrifying, how far it can travel, and also that it probably gets to these locations intact, which is the whole issue of this stuff does not degrade and is so unsustainable in terms of its future kind of at its current rate. In terms of Australia specifically, obviously home to some incredible natural marine life and also incredible natural wonders of the world, like the Great Barrier Reef. I guess interesting to know how it has a particular impact on those very delicate ecosystems. And I guess also if there's a particular moment or experience that you've had that's particularly shocked or surprised you in kind of your work on plastic pollution, and if there's a moment that you've been kind of pretty horrified at seeing during your time working on it.
Yeah, the Great Barrier Reef is impacted by marine debris because not only do we have a lot of cities along the coastline, but we have a lot of offshore debris washing up onto the Barrier Reef as well. So at the moment, we're in our cyclone season. We just actually had a cyclone come through in the last couple of days. What we can see is that cyclones in the South Pacific can push debris from different areas. And as it comes across to the coast, we get influxes of debris loads that can be 2 or 3 times what we would normally find. And so what we've been doing over the years is a helicopter survey in Cape York along the east coast, where we've been able to survey the marine debris loads in those areas that you can't get to by road or by boat, because they're so remote, or the reefs don't allow you to get close. And I guess that's probably one of the most overwhelming situations, where we've had a section of coastline there that's a couple of 100 kilometres long, but it's some of the thickest debris loads and plastic loads that we've ever seen. And I remember stopping in the helicopter on this one spot to ground truth what we were seeing from the air. And I was literally in tears. I was so overwhelmed that there would be no way that we could actually clean up this area, because you just can't get to it without a helicopter. Yeah. And we know that every single, tide will bring more and more rubbish washing up, plus these extreme weather events that just exacerbate this problem as well. So, when I look at it, and we have a big mantra at Tangaroa Blue, which is, if all you do is clean up, that's all you'll ever do. And so while the cleaning up is critical, the next tide will bring more. So that's an unsustainable strategy in itself. We need to stop this at the source, and we need to connect all the countries together in a region to make sure it's going to be impactful.
Yeah, it is pretty terrifying, right? Parts of the world that are kind of untouched by humans, and yet we are still kind of managing to wreck it and really unable to do anything about it at the moment. And sort of education being one of those key mechanisms in helping to prevent that, and prevent kind of, as you say, future loads from washing up on those shores. I know we've kind of talked about sort of international waste, and the fact that actually, even if you stop plastic pollution in Australia, a lot of that waste is coming in from overseas and from other countries. I guess interesting to know a bit more around the importance of organisations like Tangaroa Blue taking action and also collaborating with wider initiatives like the Commonwealth Clean Oceans campaign, or with international partners, or indeed the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, and I guess taking and joining and showing collective action in tackling plastic pollution and the impact that it has on our oceans.
Yeah, the way that we designed the Australian Marine Debris Initiative was to connect all stakeholders that need to be part of the solution. So we can't expect environmental conservation organisations to solve environmental problems across the world, because we're not necessarily the ones that have the power to make legislative change or make industry best practice or anything like that. However, we can facilitate and we can provide the platforms together to work on these kind of solutions. And we want the solutions that are proposed to be practical. Like there's a sector within the conservation sector that would say the way that we solve this problem of plastics in the ocean is we just ban plastics. We just ban them. And we know that that's not practical. It's never going to happen. Plastic is actually an amazing product. The problem is that we're using it for things that we shouldn't use it for, and therefore it's getting disposed of and discarded, and it doesn't have a value anymore. So that's what we need to change. And so we want to make sure that the solutions that we are proposing are practical. They take into consideration economics, communities, where locations are, so geography. And if we can think about all of those components together, then we're much more likely to come together with solutions that will work and that will be impactful. But not only that, that are scalable. So we want to have solutions that have worked in a small community that other communities can learn from. So not everybody's starting from scratch every time we want to start a campaign on a particular item. Let's learn from what worked in other places, and more importantly, what didn't work, so we don't have to keep making the same mistakes all the time as well. And that's if we can connect both domestically in Australia and internationally, then we reduce the resourcing that's needed, because we're not starting on the bottom of the ladder anymore. And I think that that's what's critical. That's what's critical about organisations like Tangaroa Blue, the networks that we've created through the AMD, but also how we connect internationally with other countries as well.
Yeah, I guess, it's so fascinating, and it shows the power of these kind of shared networks. If you had one message for people to take away in combating plastic pollution across oceans, what would it be?
It would be, do something today. Start today. There is something that everybody could do today in their daily life and in their business that would reduce their plastic consumption. Don't try and become perfect overnight, because you'll become overwhelmed and you'll fail, and then you'll feel like there's nothing that you can do. But there is everything we can do. There's something that we can always do today. So start today. And that would be my message. And it's what I say when I work with partners that are implementing programs in their businesses or in their households or in their schools, that might be quite challenging issues. It's don't try and tackle it all at once. Almost do it in a triage kind of system. Have a look at what things could be done today and start on those. There might be other things that you need to, have about 6 months to figure out that might be a bit more challenging. We'll put them into, panel 2, and in panel 3, those things might be technology that doesn't exist yet that you might need to hold on to and wait until we get, caught up on those things. But, at least start with the stuff we can do. And then if we do that en masse, that's when we see big impact.
Yeah, no, amazing advice. And I think, always kind of start small and scale it up, and you be surprised how quickly you can kind of get somewhere as well. Looking ahead, know that there are some exciting opportunities coming up for people to get involved in the work of Tangaroa Blue, and one of those being the National Marine Debris Initiative, which takes place in March across every state in Australia. Are you able to just give a bit more of an insight into what that entails and how people can help support it?
What we've really been focusing on in the last couple of years is we have a really good understanding where we need big, impactful cleanup activities. Those areas in Cape York where we can remove up to 3 tonnes per kilometre, but we can only do them once a year because they are quite challenging. And they give us a snapshot of the data of what the issue is up there. But we really wanted to have better science coming through. So we've set up, at the moment, we have more than 80 monitoring sites around Australia. And so they get done 4 times a year. We use transects, so a bit more scientific process and protocols around them. And what we invite is volunteers that can come and help us at their local monitoring site. Of course, if there isn't one in their local area, we'd love to set one up as well. So it's not just about beaches, it's about creeks and rivers and lakes. It's that connection of fresh water to salt water. And so in March is the first one for 2026, where we'll go out to all our monitoring sites around Australia for that process and that event. And that will help build that more rigorous science, which shows us not only what's happening once a year, but what happens in each season, what happens after cyclones, what happens after flooding. And that really gives us a better insight where we can take data to the government for policy decisions. We can give this data to businesses and industry so they can really understand the impact of some of their processes. And we give this data to their communities because they can do community activities and activations about what's actually impacting their local beaches as well. So it's a process that enables communities to use the data, but also scale it all the way through to international platforms and forums.
Yeah, it's an incredible campaign, and I know then follows on, or is followed on later in March by the Australian leg of the King's Baton Relay, and very excitingly know that Tangaroa Blue is the Australian partner for the Commonwealth Clean Oceans campaign, and you guys will be undertaking a clean-up in Townsville up in Queensland at the end of the month of March. Now, thanks, Heidi, for an amazing conversation and learning a bit more around the work of Tangaroa Blue, and can't wait to see your clean-up in March on the Australian leg of the King's Baton Relay. Keep an eye out for future conversations with our partners across the Commonwealth as we learn more about their work and the impact that plastic pollution has across their communities as part of the Commonwealth Clean Oceans Catch-Up series. Thanks.